Joining me now, the president and CEO of FreedomWorks, Adam Brandon. Adam, great to have you with us.
Hey, thanks very much for having me. I've been listening to what you were talking about before, and a quick thumbnail for you on congressional races. If the presidency, if Donald Trump is down by 2 nationally, that's a pretty good indication that the House will be taken back. So just think of it that way. You kind of grade it on a curve by -2, and that should tell you where the state of the overall congressional ballot is.
How do you make that work? I mean, let's look at this, Adam Brandon. The new Emerson poll just out has Trump only trailing Biden nationally by 2, which is a stunner right there. Remember, he in the middle of July with the George Floyd and the riots and the protests, and the Democrats were riding that wave. Biden was up some polls by 15. Now, Emerson's got it as 2. Trafalgar's got Trump pulling ahead in Michigan, North Carolina, tied in Minnesota. What's happening here?
Okay, well, there's a lot of data that I'm going to try and get through real quick here because there's just some incredible stuff starting to happen. First and foremost, over the last 3 weeks, the president's approval rating has gone nationally from 35 to 41%. And a lot of that has to do with coronavirus starting to ebb, and a lot of that has starting to do with the overreach on these riots. This is why Joe Biden came out the other day and said that the riots are bad. Finally, he's starting to say something there. But let's look at the state of Ohio. I saw a major poll in Ohio that came out, and I read it in my hometown Cleveland Plain Dealer this morning. 1,900 people sampled. That is a huge poll. That could be a national poll, 1,900 people. And here's the numbers. 50 for Trump, 45 for Biden, 2% for other. Only 3% in the state of Ohio undecided. And with the depth of that poll, that could kind of show you what's happening around the rest of the industrial Midwest. The other good news numbers, Michigan, Trump's up 47-45. And I guess you could say this is that shocker one. Minnesota's a dead tie. Minnesota's a complete toss-up right now. I mean, if Trump won Ohio, Michigan, Minnesota, he probably wins re-election right now.
Well, look, he's going to win Florida, he's going to win Ohio, and he's going to win North Carolina, right? I think Arizona might be a little bit in question, but let's say he wins those states and Arizona. I think he's going to win that. Do you know that Biden, in order to get elected, has to run the table in these 4 Rust Belt states? He's got to win Michigan. This is Biden. He's got to win Pennsylvania, Michigan, Minnesota, and Wisconsin. If Trump wins one of those states, he's 270 plus it's over. Trump can also win one of those states, lose Arizona, pick up New Hampshire and Minnesota, and still get to 270. So it's almost, Adam, it's almost flipped in 6 weeks. It's now, there's multiple scenarios for Trump to get reelected, and the pathway for Biden is starting to narrow because he's got to win all of these states. He's not going to win Florida. He's not going to win Ohio. He's not going to win North Carolina. He's not going to, all this talk about he's going to win Georgia. Done. All those are done now. He's not going to win those. But like you said, if you look at Ohio, 3% undecided. This race, Adam Brandon, is about mobilization, not persuasion, right?
So Pennsylvania, here's some numbers I have on that. Now, on the surface, they don't look so great. 49-42 for Biden, okay? That's also tightening. But this is the most important numbers here. In Pennsylvania, the most important issues is jobs and the economy. Overwhelmingly in Pennsylvania, it's jobs and the economy. Well, let's take a look at that. In that same poll, who has the overwhelming 60-40 numbers on who's the best able to lead the country back to rebuild the jobs and the economy? It's Trump. So even though Biden's winning in Pennsylvania, Trump is dominating on the issue that matters most to folks in Pennsylvania. I mean, if there's not a path to victory in that, this is just pure optimism right now in Pennsylvania. The other thing I just have to point out, yes, you got to keep watching the coronavirus numbers and what happens to those, but the debates are going to be very, very, very impactful. And what I believe will happen in the debates, so a place like Pennsylvania, people who are supporting Biden because they don't like Trump's tone, but they like him on the economy, if he does well in debates, I wouldn't be surprised if they just either switch to Trump or just stay home. Either way, that would deliver Trump a victory in Pennsylvania.
So you really think the debates are going to matter, even though in this big poll in Ohio, when the Cleveland Plain Dealer, only 3% are undecided. So,
Right.
I mean, if you have that little people undecided and you know, if Biden goes to a debate and he says his name and recognizes where he is, and of course the media will immediately say he had a stunning victory, he looked great, he's energized, right, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't matter what actually happens in the debate. They're going to declare him the winner. But you actually think that the debate is going to sway people, Adam?
Well, here's what I think it will do. I mean, this is going to be a close race. It is going to start to get tight. But you've got two major dynamics. Trump's support is strong, and they're excited about him. Biden's support is weak, and they are not excited about him. So if Biden doesn't have this masterful debate performance, the chances that people stay home goes up. The Trump supporters are going to go out no matter what. The Biden supporters, and that's when you start looking at turnout. And if the Trump supporters will crawl through a river of fire to vote for him, and the Biden supporters, after seeing him in the debates, just aren't that excited, you could start looking at these larger victories for Trump. And that's where some of these other down ballot races, that helps out in the Senate, and that would help out in these congressional races. There are 30 races, 30 Democrats who live in districts that Donald Trump won. If Trump has a good night and you flip half of those seats back, Nancy Pelosi's out of a job.
How many of those seats do the Republicans need to win? Because they don't really have anything at risk, right? I mean, anything that was at risk is already gone. Either people
Right.
retired,
Mm-hmm.
right? Remember all the retirements, or the 30 seats they won in Trump districts. So, like, there's nobody really at risk that I've heard of. That maybe there might be somebody in Arizona or something, but the Democrats aren't going to get a lot of pickups. One, maybe two, that's it. Of those
Correct.
30 seats, these are Democrats that flipped and got the Republican out in Trump districts in 2016. They got him out in 2018. How many of those do the Republicans have to win in order to fire Pelosi?
Just about half. I would say safely 20. If Republicans pick up a net 20 seats, that should be enough to take over the House of Representatives, because you're always taking a few, losing a few. As you mentioned, we are concerned about David Schweikert out in Phoenix, in his district. There's a couple that we're watching, but for the most part, we're not worried about Chip Roy in Texas, out of suburban San Antonio. His numbers are real tight. But I'm feeling much better about those guys. So I don't think we're going to lose as many of those as we feared even a few months ago. And that means you really can start focusing. I mean, a lot of our political effort is focused on these on a handful of House races. People like Yvette Harold out in New Mexico. All of the candidates we're supporting are people who won on election day but lost as the buckets of absentee ballots came in a week later. But we are hoping that there's enough of a majority this time that doesn't happen. Plus some other work we'll be doing on the other side of ensuring ballot integrity. But I would say 20 seats, and I would say right now I'm feeling good about a dozen pickups. So taking back the House of Representatives, even though I would put it just under 50%, probably like 45% if I'm putting a number down. And holding the Senate, that's looking better today too. That's probably just over 50% that you're going to be holding the Senate. I'm seeing better numbers across the board.
Adam Brandon with us. He's the president and CEO of FreedomWorks. Go to freedomworks.com. Adam, I appreciate your analysis. I think you're spot on. I think we hold the Senate, no question. If Trump wins this election in these swing states, and I think right now he's becoming the favorite to do that. If you look at the bookmakers in London, I don't look at the betting markets in the U.S. because that's just stupid. I go by the bookmakers in London. These are people in the UK and all over the world putting down big money. And Trump was a 2-1 underdog June 30th. Now he's a slight favorite. He's 117 to 100, which means you got to put $117 up now to win 100. And on June 30th, you could put 100 on Trump to win 200. That's where the money's gone. It's just flipped over. But we could have a scenario where Trump wins, holds the Senate, and Republicans pick up 13, 14 seats. Nancy Pelosi has a 3 2 or 3 seat majority. How's that going to work?
Well, I think if that's the case, what starts to happen is, at least in history, you end up getting a couple more that flip over.
Right,
you get a couple more politicians that are like kind of that center of the road politician who just kind of follow the vicissitudes of politics of the day, and they look at it and they're like, I could be, because if I flip, I'm a backbencher Democrat, but if I flip over, Republicans will make me a deal and I'm running Ways and Means.
Right.
That type of stuff starts to happen, and you go out and you collect your last 2 or 3 that way sometimes. But even if Pelosi only has a 2 or 3 person majority, as you can just ask John Boehner this, if you only have a majority of 10 or less members, you barely have a majority, because it's impossible to keep people in line. And what would be kind of interesting if Pelosi only had 3, 4, 5 person majority, you would have a lot of bills that you only needed a couple Democrats to jump on board, and you could pass major pieces of legislation. I'm excited about that opportunity, John.
Well, look, I think that her best case right now is she hangs on by about 3, but I don't think she's going to do that. I tell you, the 2 seats here in Virginia, Adam, the Republicans are going to take both seats back. They're going to win the second with Scott Taylor. Elaine Lurie is a dreadful candidate. Taylor's going to win that seat. And probably one of their best candidates in the nation in a Trump district is Abigail Spanberger in the 7th. Nick Friedis is going to win that seat. And here's the reason. You got 2 things going on. Trump is going to carry the 7th probably by 3 to 5. It's really difficult for a one-term congresswoman to overcome that. I mean, you would have to get 3 or 4 or 5% of people voting Trump Spanberger. Not going to happen. Second problem she has is, and the Democrats have this problem nationally. You saw it, Adam, in Los Angeles a few months ago. They have no ground game. 0. I mean, we have thousands and thousands of people in Virginia every night knocking on doors. The Democrats have 0. They won't come out of their house. What type of an advantage is that, Adam?
Well, it's a huge advantage. And those who are coming out of their house, they're just going into the cities and burning it down right now. That's hardly the ground game that you need. That is a significant. The problem with this election and predicting it is turnout. Again, and when I talk to pollsters, that's what keeps them up at night when they're making their calls on this. When you see these polls that show Biden is up by 10, 15 points, those are generic, and those don't get into likely voters. So polling, now that we're getting closer to the election, the polls will tighten just because pollsters shift to likely voters. And likely voters, those numbers will increase with Trump. And again, as I say this over and over again, it is a turnout race. And right now the intensity is on Team Trump. A lot of people are supporting Biden. I mean, there's a lot of people who will vote for a Democrat no matter what, right? We know that exists.
Right.
But there are so many, especially in the suburban voters of Biden supporters, they're just not that into him. They're just not that excited about him. And so what does that mean they turn out? Especially if they're nervous about leaving their house, or if Biden doesn't do a great job doesn't beat Trump up in the primary or in the debates. These numbers start looking better for Trump. And then I start getting excited about these down ballots. And by the way, guys, this is such an important year to win at the state house level, because it is a census year. You're going to have a major redistricting happening in the next couple of years as congressional districts leave places like New York and go to places like Utah and Florida.
Let's go to New York and the flight that is going on there, Adam. I want you to comment on that. I was talking to a friend of mine yesterday that's moving out of there, and he said that he was on a 3-week, he called like 15 moving vans. This is a guy I talked to Sunday. Yeah. He talked to, the best one he could find is got a 3-week wait. 3 week.
And they're all one way.
To get a van. What is up with that?
Well, that New York City that I used to really enjoy to go to, take my wife, and we would go do the traditional dinner and a show. I'm not sure it still exists. I don't know what's going to be left when we get back. And this is the real sadness about a lot of these protests, is that the people who are going to get hurt the most are the poor and minority folks who live in these cities. As the cities take it on a chin and as people move away, those are the folks who are going to be able to get beat. Those folks will be hurt the most. But I'm hearing the same thing. I have donors and supporters who have all moved to places like Florida. You look at the data, Texas, Florida, Tennessee. These are all people who are seeing a net inflow of folks, and that the problem for these states is that they have high taxes and high rates of spending, but you're losing your tax base. So that means the people who are poorer are now going to face a higher tax bill. It's a nasty, nasty negative downward spiral to get your state and local economy, caught in. But New York's emptying out, John.
It's a sad, sick situation. I was talking to a friend of mine there again when I was there it kind of reminds me when I was there in the 70s. I mean, there were certain places you couldn't go. You couldn't go for a walk in Central Park after dark, no matter what. You simply couldn't go there. I remember when I lived there because I went to school at New York University, which is down by the Village, and I have people come and visit me when I was at NYU and whatever. And I would draw them a map. They want to go out from other towns, explore the city, and I draw them like just on a piece of paper and say, okay, these are the streets that you can't go over the barrier. Like you can't go past 8th Avenue, you can't go to 9th or 10th, you can't go past 110th Street, right? Because if you go any of these places, you'll be dead. You're not going to come back, and there's no police there, right? Mm-hmm. And if you're driving and they come with the squeegee, just give them the $10. Let them squeeze the car and go because you put your life in your hands. I mean, that was in the 70s. It's like they're going back there. It's like Back to the Future.
It really is. And this is after 9/11, you had a big jolt to New York, but the internet wasn't developed the way it is today. Now people are finding that they can be living. I saw numbers that 800,000 people have left New York City. 800,000.
Wow.
300,000 have moved to upstate New York. Westchester County and those spots. They're not coming back. 200,000 have left for other states. And okay, so I'm not a real good math guy, but that leaves me with 300,000 people returning to New York. That's a net loss of 500,000 of individuals. These are the folks that are keeping your grocery stores, your small restaurants in business, and they're gone.
Unbelievable. Very quickly, though, how is Freedom Works engaged in this election for the next 60 days?
A lot of what we're doing is based on our activists and texting. So it's we're going to be doing a lot of internet advertising, and we're going to be doing a lot of activist texting. I mean, we're sending out hundreds of thousands of texts a week into these different targeted areas, identifying different voters. First, you start by making sure that you have your GOP folks turning out, and then you start having conversations with people in the middle and the suburbs who are kind of undecided. You try and figure out which ones of those folks are, you can flip over to our side and turn out. I mean, so it's going to be a lot of hand-to-hand work, and it's going to be busy, and we've got people working different races across the country. But, of course, it's the big ones in the industrial Midwest that we've got to win for Trump.
Adam, thanks for being with us today, and thanks for all you do and for Freedom Works. Adam Brandon, CEO and President of Freedom Works.